Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to Newgen Software Technologies Limited Q2 FY22 financial results conference call. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal the operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Ms. Tripti Mehra Chugh from Newgen Software Technologies Limited. Thank you, and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am Tripti Mehra, Investor Relations, Newgen Software Technologies Limited, and I welcome you all to the Q2 FY22 results of the company. I hope all are keeping safe. Joining with me today from our management is Mr. Diwakar Nigam, Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Varadarajan, Whole-Time Director, Mr. Virendra Jeet, Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Arun Kumar Gupta, Chief Financial Officer. Before we move on to the discussion, let me highlight that this call may contain certain forward-looking statements concerning Newgen's future business prospects and profitability, which are subject to a number of risks and uncertainties, and the actual results may vary materially from the forward-looking statements. Past performance may not be indicative of the future performance. The company does not undertake to make any announcement in case any of these forward-looking statements become materially incorrect in the future, or update any of these forward-looking statements made from time to time on behalf of the company. For further details, you may refer to the Investor Relations section of our website. I now hand over to Mr. Nigam for presentation of the results, which will be followed by the Q&A. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our Q2 FY22 earnings call. I am pleased to present another quarter of profitable growth with margins and cash improvements. To begin with, I am glad to announce changes in the management structure. Virendra Jeet has been promoted to take up the role of CEO, and Tarun Nandwani has taken up the role of COO in the organization. Both have played key roles in shaping the company over the last 25 years and have been pillars of Newgen. With this transition towards a professional structure, I firmly believe this would bring in new energy in the company and position us strongly to tap significant global opportunities. This internal promotion also reflects the company's core philosophy to invest in developing leaders in the organization and bring up Newgen as a family. We all continue to be enthused by the same vision, focus, and strategy with renewed vigor. On the operational front, we continue to work on a hybrid model. The senior management is now coming to office 2-3 times a week. Projects teams are now coming to work together as and when needed. Face-to-face meetings are happening. Training in person are taking place for new joinees. Our sales and business people have started to move to customer location as things are opening. We hope that by the end of this quarter, this would get further streamlined. In terms of performance for the quarter, revenue witnessed a growth of 20% to reach 186 crores during the quarter. All the geographies have performed well and continue to grow steadily. During the quarter, especially EMEA region has witnessed a growth of 59%, and India has witnessed a growth of 14%. We continue to help our existing and new customers in creating digital capabilities across their modern day business needs. The quarter marked significant additional business from our existing customers again, We also added 9 new logos during the quarter. Some of these logos are in the process of being built currently. Some key orders during the quarter included providing a solution for a subvention system to government organization in Singapore, providing IBPS platform upgrade for leading private sector bank in India, rolling out our commercial loan origination system solution for a leading bank in Kenya, offering full range of financial services, providing an enterprise-wide banking solution support amalgamation of banking entities in the nationalized bank in India. Our annuity revenues continue to grow stronger. Annuity revenues were at rupees 115 crore, witnessing a growth of 17% YOY. This represents 62% of our business now. We continue with our transition towards subscription revenues, which witnessed a growth of 23% YOY, reaching to rupees 61 crores on SaaS. We witnessed a growth of 35% YOY. Banking and financial services and insurance continue to be our key growth verticals. Our offerings and opportunities. On the product front, our Newgen One platform is receiving good acceptance from the customers and system integrators. Newgen's market differentiation is based on our breadth of capabilities for automating complex processes at scale. Our platform manages rapid application development with business complexity, enterprise-wide data access, customer experience, and integration with back-end applications. The future belongs to simplifying the way we work, simplifying complex content and process requirements of our customers. This includes offering enhanced self-service experience, handling business complexity with full context and simplicity, automating processes, eliminating paper and manual interventions as much as possible, and using data insights to offer personalized services and products. And our platforms does just that. Reinforcing our strong position in the industry, we have featured in the 2021 Gartner Magic Quadrant for low code as a niche player this quarter. This is our second time in a row that we have appeared in the low code quadrant. The key focus areas of our platform direction from here on are to improve customer and employee experience, enable rapid application development, facilitate intelligent automation, and enhance the platform scalability, security, manageability, and deployment. Companies are fast adopting digital-first business practices and ways of working to withstand the changes caused by pandemic and ensure their long-term success. Newgen is the right long-term partner in this journey for the company. As an organization, we are taking all the necessary steps for creating a solid foundation for continued and sustainable business momentum. Low-code development is becoming a large wave in the world. With our IBPS platform, we are one of the front runners in low-code process development. We are enhancing it for rapid app development as well. We see unlimited opportunities worldwide in this field. Profits and margins. We have maintained our growth momentum on the profit margins. Our EBITDA was up by 13% YOY at 47 crores and profit after tax up 28% YOY at 37 crores. We continue to invest heavily in our global expansion, our products, and our people. During the quarter, R&D expenses comprised about 10% of sales, and marketing expenses comprised 21%. Our balance sheet is strengthening with every quarter. We have a cash and bank balance of 298 crores, and the net cash generated from the operating activity was 104 crores for the first 6 months of the year. Our debtor days continues to show improvements. Our net trade receivables were rupees 174 crores at the end of the quarter, which resulted in net DSO of 87 days on the back of robust sale and collection. For the half year ended September 30, our revenues were rupees 345 crores, witnessing a growth of 20% YOY, and a profit after tax was rupees 59 crores, growing at 54% YOY. We are happy to be back on track on our historical growth path and hope that uncertain environment is behind us and markets open up quickly. On the GSI relationship, our partners are stepping up and taking greater interest in working with us. Our pipeline is strong and growing over the last year across market in APAC, EMEA, and US. We are seeing action in newer geographies like Australia as well. With this, I end my commentary on the results and wish you a safe and a happy festive season. We are now open to Q&A.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with the question and answer session. Anyone wishing to ask a question may please press star and 1 on your touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, if you wish to ask a question, you may please press star and 1. A reminder to the participants, anyone wishing to ask a question may please press star and 1. The first question is from the line of Kunal Shah from Carnelian Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thank you for the opportunity and congratulations on good set of numbers. I had one accounting query. Basically, while
there's a lot of disturbance from your line.
Okay, just a moment.
Sure, sir.
Is it better now, sir?
A little better, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I had basically one accounting query. So if I observe over the years the accounts, right, I had one observation where our bad dates over the years have ranged, specifically in the last 3 years, almost in the range of 12 to 15% of our PBT. So just wanted to understand, how do we go about revenue recognition and, about the collection policy and all. If you could basically help understand the revenue and collection cycles a little bit, it would be of great help.
Sorry, Kunal, can you repeat the question once again? We couldn't hear you properly.
Yeah, sure, Deepi. So basically, while going through the accounts for the last 3 years, I had an observation where, bad debts what we book in the accounts forms almost like 17 to 20% of our PBT, that is profit before tax. So just wanted to understand how do we go about revenue recognition and collections. If you could help understand the revenue and the collection cycle, right, that would be of great help.
Hey Kunal, thanks for the question. I'll try to answer and probably you can seek more data from Deepti. So you're right in terms of in any kind of a product business, we do expect some amount of provisioning and write-offs. Generally, they should remain in the range of between 1 to 2.5%, depending on the markets you are operating in. Generally, we'll have more cases of probably defaults in markets like India and EMEA, and predominantly government and other territories. And so right now the provisioning is happening through the ECL method, which is typically looking at the past trend And what has happened somewhere during the years where the currency issues were very predominant in Africa, we had higher provisionings on those years. And as the times have changed in last 2 years, they have substantially started getting reduced. In fact, this quarter we had almost negative provisioning in terms of having collected also what has been provisioned. So it is improving, and but also in the forward we are looking, there is going to be a kind of default. It could be between 1.5% of the overall revenue. That's the way we look. We don't look at the PBT level. On the revenue realization front, I think the realization practices are the ones which are very quite standard in the industry. On a license business, we have realizations as soon as the economic value is transferred, as soon as the license gets transferred and deployed at the customer side. On the services side, the revenues are realized as the services are rendered to the customer in terms of the milestones as well as realization of the effort we have put in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so how does the collection part goes, right? Because outstanding greater than 6 months of debtors, right, also forms a very good portion of the overall debtors. So while revenue recognition I could understand, right, but how does this collection goes? I mean, is it linked to milestones on the basis when we receive from that 90 days or on completion of certain? How does that part work out in both the segments of the business would be helpful as well?
Yeah, so on the license, generally the collections are not linked to any milestones. They are realized as soon as part of whether they are advances or on deployment of the software. On the services, they are on the milestone basis, predominantly on milestone. And those are the cases where sometimes the milestone delays do occur more significantly because there could be an acceptance of milestone which will take more time, or a dispute in paymenting after the milestone, you have an issue with the customer. And most of these generally would have been, now if you look at the 180 and above days collection, that amount has reduced substantially. I think if I'm sure more than 80% or 85% of our will be less than 90 days now. And a small part of will be between roughly around, I think, between 200 crores, around 30 crores is something which is above 180 days, which is it's become a very small amount. And out of that also more than 50% will be already provisioned in some ways.
Okay. So just to understand,
the ECL has come down back to almost 80 days.
Mm-hmm. So just if I have understood correctly, we book the revenue on reaching that milestone. That would be very much in lines with the time when the amount becomes due. Right. In that case, there should not be any impact on receivable delays, right? Because you are eventually booking the revenue also when the amount is kind of becoming due. That is on achieving that particular milestone, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think you have to compare historically. If you look at, we are in product license business, and if you look at product license based companies, whether they are Indian and US companies, their generally DSOs are very high. Because irrespective of the revenue realization practices, customers do end up holding payments because you are delivering product as well as services. And sometimes because of smaller issues, you are end up holding payments for a longer period of time. That's when an average DSO of a product company is generally treated high. Now it has started becoming better as the licenses have shifted to subscription or more annuity-based licenses. Then you have lesser of such problems. So you will see companies have shifted to annuity where majority of revenue, then their DSOs will be more closer to the service companies. But on traditional sense, significant part of our revenue still is a license. We still operate in a DSO range of around 110 days. And over last 3 years, it has come from roughly around 200 days to 100 days. Now it's almost at 88 days. As the contribution from mature markets and subscription part of revenue grows, this keeps on improving.
Okay. And just 2 more questions as a follow-up to this question. So historically, what is the amount that we have written off? I mean, where we might have not provided, but we will have to return off. You said that it is in the range of 1 to 1.5% of the overall revenues. Is that understanding correct? That is what something which eventually one has to write off?
Dipti can send you the data, historical data, and in future we look at that way that it's around 1.5% of the future revenue may be affected by provisioning or DSOs?
Actually, last 2-3 years, basically there is a change in accounting standard also, which has also impacted this number. So basically, a major part of provisioning has happened because of change in accounting standard also in last 3 years, especially earlier 2 years. So that has also impacted, but we can come back with the data more on this.
Sure, sir. And just one question again pertaining to this only. We work with a lot of system integrators, right? And we are seeing good traction out there as well. So how does the revenue recognition and the receivables work with the system integrators? I mean, we directly get from the end clients, or basically, we are due to receive it from system integrators. How does that work? If you could shed some light, that would be helpful as well. That's it from my side, sir.
Yeah. So on the system integrator business, predominantly our focus is on transfer of licenses or sale of subscription. So since the service components are lower, so the realization of licenses and subscriptions are more cleaner. And also our contracts can be both. They can be through a system integrator or through a direct end client. So both models do exist. So we will have revenues coming in directly from end clients, or they may be coming through system integrators.
Okay, but the DSOs more or less would be the same, about 90 to 120 days, or with system integrators again it would be a little on the higher side?
I think we expect it to be much lower, because as I told, there is no service component to it. But I think this business is still forming up. We have established it over last one year, 1.5 years. So I think as the time goes by, our expectation is the DSO figures in system integrator should be lower than our traditional business.
Okay, sure, sir. Thank you very much. I'll get back in the queue if I've got any questions for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. A reminder to the participants, anyone wishing to ask a question, may please press star and 1. Participants in the conference, if you wish to ask a question, you may please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Ashok, an investor. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Sorry to interrupt, Ashok. We are not able to hear you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, sir. First of all, congratulations on a very good set of numbers. And also would like to congratulate Mr. Virendrajit and Tarun for taking up the new roles. And we expect, good amount of energies going into these new roles. Sorry. So my first question is regarding the travel expenditure. Could you please throw some light whether we are back to the pre-COVID levels in terms of the travel expenditure or not? And I have a follow-up on that.
So, Ashok, thanks for your question. And the travel expenditure right now is very, very small. It's almost negligible. I think our traditional travel expenses will be in the range of around 8 to 10 crores a quarter. Right now, they may be less than 2 crores. So we expect them to improve over this quarter and next quarter to grow, but not to come to that level in next 1.5 year at all, because some of the part of the changes in that model are more permanent. But while as the markets open and the business takes up momentum, the travel will grow in size, but may not be at the same level as it was at a historical level ever.
Okay. So if I understand it correctly, even if you take the best case scenario, the max expenditure of the travel side would be another 8 to 9 crores of delta, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm saying is that the estimation for us is that the travel costs will improve and increase over next quarter and quarter after that, and also next year they can be substantially grow from the current number. But I think that will also result in growth in the business momentum, because the travel predominant is for the business.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And my follow-up question would be, sir, we have posted a very good set of number either in the Q1 and Q2. On a historical basis, actually these are not of our best quarters, but still we have delivered good growth momentum. First of all, congratulations on that. And I would like to know if we take whether the same run rate is going to continue into our strongest quarters of the year, which is Q3 and Q4, And are we really heading to beat our estimates of 18 to 20% growth which we have guided in the previous call?
So Ashok, right now what we have seen in Q1 and Q2, we have almost come back to the growth rates which we had traditionally. And I don't see any significant change happening in Q3. But Q3, Q4, as you are rightly saying, are much larger revenue quarters for them. So the growth, maintaining growth momentum is more challenging than what is in Q1 and Q2. But right now, looking at the funnel and the way the things are going, we hope to continue the growth momentum. Whether it's going to be 15%, 20 or 25, I think we will not be in the position right now to comment on that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And all the very best for your new role and all the very best for the rest of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Venkat G, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Hello, Venkat. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Sir, first of all, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity and congratulations on the good numbers this quarter. I'll keep short and sweet. Sir, I have gone through the data region-wise revenue numbers. We have done exceptionally well in India, APAC and India, but on the US side, the numbers have little lower compared to year on year or quarter on quarter. Can you throw some light on the US business?
Yeah, thanks, Venkat.
Thank you so much for.
You are right. The US growth are not at our expectation level. There are predominantly two reasons. Last year, I think for Q1 and Q2, we had significant jump up in quarter revenues on account of one-time business, which was more on paycheck protection program of US. So we added a substantial number in revenue in Q1 and also a follow-up substantial number in Q2. So maintaining a growth momentum over that number was, a bit of a challenge. But however, on the other things, we have also compensated a lot of things in terms of what GSI initiatives are happening in US and other things. And we hope to fix the issue in the coming next few quarters.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rahul Jain from Dolat Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Congratulations on strong number and congratulations for the management change and congratulations, Jeet, on the elevation. My question is pertaining to this US as an end market. So if you could give me a broad thought process, because of course you just answering to the previous question, you alluded that there was a one-time kind of an opportunity that we benefited from last year, and now we are kind of not falling on the same run rate. But if you have to draw 1 year, 2, 3 year to 5 year kind of a picture, how you see this geography shaping up, and what is the area of focus that would drive that kind of number for us?
Rahul, thanks for your question. Rahul, the way we look at US geography, we have two initiatives on the go-to-market going on there. One is we have our traditional market, which is the mid-tier banks in US, where we are capturing between 6 to 15 banks, depending on which year we are. And that is a space of roughly around 1,000 accounts where we are going and penetrating that market. We already have around 30 such banks as our customers, and that's what we are growing. Of course, last year, we, as you rightly said, PPP was a one-time initiative, but beyond that also last year, getting new logo acquisition was a challenge last year. And it is to an extent, even this year, it's not completely opened up. It's a bit of challenge. But over 2 to 3 years horizon, we think this is an area where we have a potential to get 20, 25, 30, even 40 accounts a year and grow that as a business. Beyond that, the significant investment we are doing is in our horizontal sale of products to global system integrators. That's what we are investing deeply right now. There is enough product recognition from Gartner, Forrester, and system integrators have started recognizing. And we are forming deep relationships with few of them. And that is a US market where we're focusing on Fortune 2000 clients. And this has been not our traditional customer base. We have been going on tier 2 accounts in most of the mature markets. With this, we should think of a further acceleration of sales. For us to realize our long-term ambition, the US has to become the primary market and has to become a significant growth driver. So in short term, we could always, have higher growth rates in APAC or Middle East. But in the 3 to 5 years horizon, we expect US to do much higher growth rate than 20-25% for us to reach the goals where we have set for the company. So I expect that in next 1 year, 2 years, the US becoming the largest growth driver for the company.
Right. If I would like to prod you a little bit more on the two key drivers that you have identified. So first of all, when you said, if I heard you right, you said you have 1,000 odd bank in the mid-tier space, which is your key target market, and we already have 30 customers, and 25-40 customers is what we can tap upon. So what could drive this client acquisition foray for us in that market? Is it simply more foot in the ground, or improved referenceability is what is going to drive it? And secondly, on the SI side also, we have this relationship for now for a couple of years, and we are seeing all these popular SI companies are doing pretty well on their own BFSI revenue growth in this market, but somehow this has not scaled up for us. So what is stopping us in this SI channel per se?
Yeah, so okay, I'll just see on the bank side, you're absolutely right. I think the acceleration comes from two facts. One is if you have more referenceability and you have more penetration in banks, more you are able to sell, because it's not a single market, it's quite wide market. So you need local, especially in the mid-tier banks, you need a lot of local referenceability, solution referenceability. So some amount of acceleration will come as we become larger and larger in that market. But of course, beyond that, it's all our own ability to execute on the sales and marketing side. On the SI side, there is more than the referenceability. It's about the brand. It's about the penetration into the GSI client base, as well as mapping up their accounts. So this is what has started yet. I think we have been very lucky to get very good wins earlier. We got 6, 7, 8 wins. I think we are having roughly around another 60 to 70 cases which we are pursuing with the GSIs globally. And there is some amount of delays in terms of order cycles, because some of their order cycles are more, larger time frame than our regular cycles of 6 to 7 months. Out there, the contracting is taking much more time. But we hope that establishes itself, and once we get the initial run rate going, then we should be able to address the universe much better with, as there are 3 or 4 system integrators who can cover this 2,000 accounts very well for us. So we are hoping on the banking side, our organic model should suffice with more acceleration in sales and marketing. And on the GSI side, some amount of brand building and some amount of getting better recognition from more GSIs and penetrating these larger accounts will help.
Right. And sorry to, I have one more follow-up on this. So when you said this 3,000 identified bank, I think this is the subset of some 5,000 odd community banks US have. And my understanding suggests that the India-centric GSI do not have a very deep penetration when it comes to this community banks. They're more in the top 100 universe. Correct me if I'm wrong on this part. So does that also mean somewhere we need to partner more domestic local service provider which can add to the momentum?
Rahul, let me clarify. The strategy which is for the 1,000 entities on banking and credit unions is a direct sales strategy. We are not using the global system integrators for that. As you are right, they have no interest in that business. The ticket sizes will not service them. So that is a direct sales strategy. We have already successfully executed it. We got our first 30 banks out there, and we are going to expand that on our own through our direct sales team. The GSI is only focusing for Fortune 2000 clients. That's a very different. So
okay. So okay. Right. Sorry. So basically, you were referring to Fortune 2000 customer. I was more thinking from a 2000 bank. Okay. So basically, because you said this is more like an horizontal approach for you, not limited to one particular vertical. So got it. Thanks for the clarification, and best of luck for the time ahead.
Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you. A reminder to the participants, anyone wishing to ask a question, may please press star and 1. The next question is on the line of Ronak Vora from OHM Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. So how do you see the order pipeline for the low-code application space?
Yeah, Ronak, thank you for your question. So, Ronak, low-code is a huge interest area right now globally, and it's not, I think, it's not a kind of a business opportunity on its own, but it's the kind of approach or a strategy or a product capability which most of the digital initiatives are expecting from their vendors. So products and platforms which have strong low-code capabilities have better chance of winning those digital initiatives. So the way we see this is a very, very globally large market, but also there is a lot of competition in this market, with Newgen being very strong on the process-centric applications and content-centric applications, and our low-code capabilities end up providing a very big differentiated value to the customers. On the funnel side, all our cases are low-code cases for us because this has been the strategy we have been selling. Of course, it's been sold through process-centric, process automation sometimes intelligent business process management, sometimes digital process automation. The low-code is a new terminology by which you are driving. So all our pipeline will be based on products which are low-code products.
Okay. So in terms of capabilities, how do we differentiate ourselves from the others? Can you just throw some highlight in case if you could give some case study for better understanding?
So I think the best would be if you visit our new website, you will understand that we have a very compelling offering for digital solutions which are process-centric and content-centric. Anybody who wants to develop a digital process which is process-centric and content-centric, we are one of the best companies in the world to do it because of the inherent capabilities of our platform. And that's where we are very strong and we are able to differentiate. And then with certain verticals in banking, insurance, government, we have our history of servicing customers and the use cases makes us very compelling for customers in these segments.
Okay. But
a lot of information is available on our website. I would really recommend that you can visit and see that.
Okay. And can you give a number? So how much would currently GSI be contributing to our sales, and where do we see GSI being a total part of our revenues in the next 3 to 5 years?
See, right now our partners, which are including GSIs and small partners, are roughly around between 16 to 18% of the revenue which they influence. We expect that in next 5 years this should become 50% of our revenue. While we can grow aggressively on our own, but with GSIs can almost reach 50% of the revenue, but that would also mean that we can drive higher growth rates to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is on the line of Hina Gada from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead. Hina, your line is in the talk mode. Please go ahead.
Hi, am I audible now?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Hi, thanks for giving the opportunity. Just one question in terms of the India business. We saw strong growth during the quarter. Are we expecting the same momentum going forward as well, or was there a one-off this quarter?
Hinal, thanks for your question. Hinal, what you've seen in India is right now the growth which is on account of our, lot of penetration into existing accounts, selling them new solutions and new products. And we think that part of growth momentum will continue as existing accounts are giving us good business. But I think we're also, expecting it supplemented by some more new logo businesses which are going to get as the markets open in India. So far, the government business, which was for us was one of the big drivers of the sales, has it's completely slowed down. We think over next 2 quarters, some part of that can restore back and push. So long term, we are hopeful that India business can maintain a 20% momentum. But on short term and near term, we are not very bullish about India business. But a single digit growth or a slightly lower double digit growth is what we expect.
Okay, thank you. And just secondly on margins as well, how much do you think can be our exit rate in this year? given that, like the situation is normalizing and some of the costs are expected to come back? What can be, not like a perfect guidance, but, just if you could give like a range kind of how much do you expect?
Yeah, so broadly, what we have done is we have already said that, the business should be able to deliver at a growth trajectory. We should be able to deliver roughly around a 19 to 20% net margin and between 23 to 25% EBITDA margins. I think this year we expect to be close to those numbers, and because Q1, Q2 are smaller for us, but on Q2 we are already at close to that number, and Q3, Q4 should significantly expand that. So we should be close to that. But you are right. On the cost front, some of the costs of which are more employee-centric costs are going up for whole of industry. We have also taken those costs so far. There could be a half a point or a one point difference because of that, depending on how the market turns.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nilesh Jethani from Envision Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. Congratulations on the great set of numbers. The first question was on the margin profile. Wanted to understand what is the difference in the margin profile when we do sales via GSI and when we do our direct sales.
Thanks, Nilesh. So, see, margin profile is dependent on the line of product which we sell. Like for our licenses, whether we sell them in subscription or licenses, these are generally treated as high gross margin because there is no direct cost associated with that. And on the service components, which are like our software implementation and software support, the margin profiles are like service company margin profiles. So, two parts of our business, which is the license and subscription and ATS AMC, these are high gross margin business. The expectation in the GSI business is that since GSI would be doing predominantly most of the services on their own, we should be able to enhance the kind of business which is of higher margin business. So the high gross margin business will grow faster than the service business. So the margin profile should become better. But also it depends on how the deal structures will be valued and other things. But on theoretically, the GSI business should be higher gross margin business.
Got it, sir. So on this itself, so we expect GSI to contribute around 50% to our revenue, and we clearly mentioned that a strategy going forward would be focusing on the Fortune 2000 clients. So one clarification I wanted. So in the earlier con call, you had guided that per annum we are targeting around 60 new clients, and per customer billing is expected to be around $300,000. So probably 60 customers per annum. In next 5 years, we can add around 300 customers. So is the funnel enough to add 300 new customers for next 5 years? So in the Fortune 2000, we already have 30 in the BFSI sector and 45 in the other.
Nilesh, I think you are right partly, because when I said we'll do 50% of our revenue, I said over the next 5 years we should be able to reach there. So on the Fortune 2000 side, we have organically some clients, but that don't count because they're part of our traditional business. Now we are expecting that every year. Last year we are at around 6. Our target for this year is to get between 12 to 15 new logos. And next year it will grow to like 30, 35, and then it will go. Eventually it can become, in 4th, 5th year, it can become 60 to 100 logos a year. But that's the journey we'll have to take. And you are right on the revenue realization. Per annum revenue rates could be anywhere between 300 to 700K per account. That's how it gets built up.
Got it. So continuing on the same, so today say we have 550 customers and our top line is around 6,730 million, say FY21. So our per customer billing is approximately $12.5 million. So say when we say we start with $300,000 revenue, by what year we can reach a substantial revenue of say a 6 million or a 12 million?
So I think you're talking 12 million rupees, not dollars, because
rupees.
Rupees. So see, the idea is unfortunately we don't see it that way in the same model. The way we see is that between those Fortune 2000 accounts, if we get 300 accounts, each account has a potential to give a $2 million kind of an annuity, between 1 million to 2 million. We should add roughly around $250 million of revenue per year to us. And then on our organic side, which we do a direct account sales in banking, insurance, government, that should add another 250 million over the next 5-6 years. This is how we want to travel. Does that answer your question?
Yes, got it. And one last question. So we have been trying to enhance our revenue on the annuity side, but in Q2 again, the growth from the sale of products was say northwards of 55%, and annuity business grew only by 17% on YOY. So again, the sale of products. So how should I read these numbers?
Yeah, so I think we are in the transition. See, we have not shifted from license to annuity. We are still focusing on our traditional license businesses in most of the parts of which is the markets which have got a lot of business in terms of new sales have been the ones which have been on license-based sales. I think the change has started. We are getting into a more aggressive phase of changing. I think from next quarter onwards, we are going to more aggressively pursue only annuity sales, and in some time we have decided to stop the license sales. And that should increase the growth percentage of annuity much higher. Because right now you don't see it the same way, but you are right. By the year end, we expect the annuity part to still grow at a much higher rate than the traditional growth rate. So right now there may be some differences between how the revenue is realized in for ATS and other things. But at the year end, historically we have always maintained a 2-3% higher growth on our annuity side than our other business.
Got it.
And that momentum should continue.
Got it. And one last thing, so we work on the 3 platform, that is ECM, other is the BPM, that is low code process automation, and third is the CCM, that is customer communication. So say today in the Newgen's top line, what would be the significant contributor amongst these 3? And what is your aspirations for these 3 segments to grow? One understanding what I have currently is that probably the BPM would be having a high margin versus the CCM and the ECM having a lower margin. Is the understanding correct?
No, not on the margin side, but most of our business use cases are driven through BPM and do have an ECM as part of already. So, our 60-70% of our cases will be a combination of ECM, BPM combined. So on margin side, because they're both licensed products, it doesn't matter which has what margin. On other hand, we'll have another 25-30% cases which are ECM alone. And CCM is much smaller, is less than 10% as of now. So all have similar margin profiles, all have similar, and all have their own growth potentials. Like with GSIs, we are thinking that should substantiate the ECM sale much faster. And on the banking and our vertical direct account sale, the BPM sale will continue to grow. And CCM, we're finding new markets in insurance and other use cases which we can push the CCM sale. They are all 3 different products. In most of the use cases, we are using under Newgen One, we are using the 1 or 2 platforms together. In some cases, all 3 platforms together.
Got it. Thank you so much, sir. Those were my questions, and all the best for the remaining part of the year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Nilesh.
Thank you. The next question is on the line of Harshal Parekh from Alf Accurate Advisors Private Limited. Please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. My question was on our license business. I just wanted to understand whether the margins in our license business and in the subscription business, so are they similar kind of, are they having similar kind of margin profile, or is there any difference in them?
Thank you for the question. I think they're absolutely same. It's only the way you are able to transfer the license. Generally in license, it's more perpetual, followed by only an ATS. But on subscription, it is more renewed every year. So you get higher annuity every year. But inherently, both are right of license, which is transferred to the customer. No direct cost associated with that. So their margin profiles are exactly the same. Only when you are selling them in cloud, you have slightly another 10-15% overhead as the cloud service cost. But then the pricing accommodates that.
Okay, so the realization would be higher, but the margin profile is similar.
Yes.
Okay. And sir, another question is respect to the travel cost. So historically, if we see, we have almost 10% of our revenues as travel costs, right? So I just wanted to know what could be the travel cost going forward. I mean, it won't be reaching the 10% levels, but indicatively, what would be the travel cost as a percentage of revenues?
You see, right now in coming next 2 quarters, we don't see it going substantially to a number where we can talk of percentages. It may remain a couple of percent at least. Next year, I think if the market completely opens up, we can almost reach almost to 50% of that earlier number. We can assume 5 to 6% as our travel cost. But very difficult to predict right now. We'll have to wait for a few more quarters to see how it goes.
Okay. Understood, sir. And so my last question is on the employee cost. So if you see historically, we have around 48 to 49% of our revenues as employee cost. So now since we are increasing our contribution from the annuity businesses, so do we see the employee cost as a percentage of revenues going downwards?
Yeah, as our percentage of business which is higher gross margin, which is in terms of license and subscription grows as an overall part of the revenue, the employee cost as a percentage of our revenue should come down.
It should come down.
That's a normal expectation.
Okay, sir. Okay. That's it from my side, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Kunal Shah from Carnelian Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity once again. I had more to understand on the global system integration part, right? So, we started business with them, say, approximately in the last 2 years, right? So, if you could help understand, right, we are working with like 2-3 system integrators. How can we scale up working with more system integrators? What plans we have, and what different do we offer to the system integrators for them to start business with us in the first place, and then to scale it up from there? How should we look at it, sir? If you could help a little bit more on that particular part.
Yeah, so Kunal, I think it's a journey. First of all, most of the product companies, once they reach a particular size, their products are carried by global system integrators, and it's a worldwide phenomenon. For us, it has taken a considerable time to reach roughly around $100 million revenue with global recognition from all leading analysts. I think that was already there. What has happened over the last 6-7 years, we had a lot of success stories with them in the emerging part of the market. We have a lot of success stories with Infosys, TCS, HCL in India, Middle East, APAC. And now that they have realized with the recognition from analysts and seen our product perform, they have got the faith and the credibility on the product that they are ready to take it to their customers. That's what has taken time, and that's where we are right now. On the other hand, we have established ourselves as a different sales channel, which is completely a GSI-based sales channel, where a lot of work is happening on mapping up GSIs globally, mapping up the Fortune 2000 accounts across multiple GSIs, not only one, and also working a lot on the GSI enablement side. Because at the end of the day, GSIs have to be very comfortable selling those products. They have to know how to implement it, how to service it. So a lot of investment is happening on the enablement side as well as the GSI enabled support. So why they take us to the market is we are in the ECM and BPM space. We are one of the few top 4 or 5 companies who have consistently been in the Gartners and Forresters for the last 10-15 years. So we are one of the top. So when they take our product to a global Fortune 2000 customer, they don't have to explain who Newgen is. Now that recognition is there. Second is they have a very high degree of reliability that with Newgen they can make the client successful because we have seen the success stories. And third, I mentioned that we have one of the most compelling stories in the industry when it comes to content-centric process automation using low-code. We are the number 1 in the world, and that's what the GSIs are realizing slowly. It will take still time to establish the brand in the market, build the credibility, have more GSIs interested in us, and make a larger funnel. And that's what we are working on right now. Does that answer your question, Kunal?
Yes, to a larger extent. So just follow up on this particular part, sir. What basically I'm trying to understand is, sir, the global system integrators would before also working with, probably would be working with somebody, right? So it is like, are we do we have cost competitive advantage for them to shift to us, or I mean, how should one look at that particular aspect is basically more what I'm trying to understand, sir.
You're right, absolutely. I think they have all the partnerships with all the major, and we have a competing landscape, they have partnerships. So two things which we bring to table. As I said, first of all, the more than the cost, the high degree of reliability to make a project successful. Because, our licenses could be 500K or a million, but the GSI account on that is based on 20 million, 50 million. For them, the stakes are much higher. So they always want a partner with high degree of reliability. That's what we have built. And the second is also on the cost advantage. Since we have a very greatly integrated product soup of ECM and BPM combined, which we call the Newgen One, it provides a very compelling value prop in terms of total cost of ownership. Our speed to implement is much better. Our systems are much integrated. And GSIs have realized that for certain areas, which are content-centric process automation, we are the best to implement.
Okay. So we would be basically taking the market share away from the existing players, if I understand that correctly.
Partly and partly the market itself is growing. The low code is opening a huge market space, digital process is opening, ECM is still a fast growing area, CCM is our very fast growing areas in the market. So market is expanding, and also we are entering and tracking the market in areas where the other operators use it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question. I now hand the conference over to Ms. Dipti Mehra Chugh for her closing comments.
Thank you so much. For any other queries, you can connect to me or visit our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Newgen Software Technologies Limited, that concludes this conference call. We thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.